In this video, I'm going to help you choose between an iPad Pro and a MacBook Pro, or an iPad Air and a MacBook Air, and also share why I think so many people, even at Apple, get this one so very wrong so very often. And it all boils down to this. If you need maximum productivity, get a Mac. If you need maximum interactivity, get an iPad. Mostly. Starry asterisk thing. Kinda. I'll get back to that. Right now, I need to try and dispel a couple of very destructive to your pocketbook and stress level misconceptions. Yeah, open bracket, rant on. First, not every single Apple product is meant for every single Apple user. And that might sound just wicked the musical obvious, but I have this incredibly vibrant, vivid memory from back when the MacBook Nothing was introduced. You know, the laptop of futures past, the one-port wonder, the Air's Air, and just how a bunch of my pundit pals lusted after it, got it, and then proceeded to suffer and complain for months and months, it felt like, that they needed to carry around the equivalent of a multi-port bag of dongle holding just so they could plug in every accessory they'd accumulated for podcasting, blogging, YouTubing, coding, whatever. Basically, cables popping from their hands like Wolverine with adamantium wilt. And all I wanted to do was take them in my arms, hug them, hush them down, walk them over to the very next table in the event center or Apple store and show them all the MacBook, you know, original recipe Pros, not Mac Milders with a bevy bunch more ports built right in. Because newer hawk ergo better hawk. Newer than it, therefore better than it means the later thing is the greater thing, but that's not always true. In fact, oftentimes they're just very different things. Like a just released bicycle isn't necessarily better than a trusty years old tractor, not for hauling a fully loaded trailer, any more than a production proof of concept for ultralight executives on constant flights was the right choice for high productive creatives needing to get shit done at their desks. No matter how shiny and ultra sexy seductive either might seem in its moment on the main stage. Same with the OG iPads when the Mac was still stuck in Intel hell and Apple's A series was making those Core M, those Core... Every Lakes look like coal-based blast furnace relics in the age of atomic fusion, of warp engines. And I get it. I mean, I totally get it. iPads have just so often been so technologically ahead that people who, by all rights, know they should be getting a Mac still get them instead, and then proceed to suffer and complain for years and years now, it feels like, that the iPad should basically just be a Mac with a peel-off display. And even today, with its ridiculous thinness and tandem OLED display, the iPad Pro seems so far beyond a Mac in so many ways other than actually being a Mac, which, second, the iPad is not and should just never not ever be. Not just because there's already a Mac, even though there very much is, or that they really just want a Mac with a touchscreen, which there very much should be. I mean, anyone born post-iPhone on first contact with the lack of contact will just assume the display is broken rather than bullheadedly non-touch in the age of multi-touch. Big sigh, different video. But I say but because the iPad was very specifically envisioned and designed not to be a Mac, not to be a traditional computer at all, to be very deliberately something else for everyone else, for every doctor, designer, artist, teacher, student, architect, and genius soul who were brilliant but just did not get or simply could not spare a single extraneous for traditional computers and their decades of anachronistic cruft. Like, yes, file systems. It was a supremely focused, fully immersive, directly manipulable gift of care to the majority of the non-nerd world, and that we nerds, not content enough with macOS, Windows, Linux, Unix, pretty much all the Nixes, have done our best to annex it anyway by endlessly complaining to Apple and the very much like nerd-minded people within that it's just not computer enough, to the point where anytime an influencer now says, Apple listened, I'm just gobsmacked terrified to open my browser and see just what nightmare faster horse has taken the place of the next car that should have been. All instead of just buying a Mac. This incredible hardware held back by this limited OS is the headline, but it's really a punchline. It's out of line. It's not limited. It's just not for us. It was never for us. Not for the 3 million mail windows that now desecrate the iPad dock, the toaster fridge concessions for text editors, the Schrodinger's tap-top, laplet, padbook, or whatever you want to call it, that's so seemingly forgotten that it wasn't meant to be just another next evolution of the keybound typewriter, but the final physical form of an infinite canvas. Hell, why not all of macOS on dual boot? So here we come to it at last. If you can't decide between an iPad and a Mac, and you absolutely can't just get a Mac and keep an iPad nothing on the side, if there can be only one, and you mostly want to do traditional computery things and need ludicrously high levels of maximum productivity to do it, if what you want, if your work descends from ledgers and typewriters and number pads and typesets and punch cards, just get a Mac. You'll enjoy a Mac. Your life will be better with a Mac. But if the very idea of any of that feels inaccessible, unapproachable, alienating, or just off-putting, if you have zero desire to click and clack your way around cells and forms and docs and IDEs and just want to touch and paint and draw and sculpt and otherwise immerse yourself in interactivity, if what you want, if your work was born of canvases and drafting tables and modeling benches and sketchbooks and whiteboards, then get an iPad and enjoy, at least until vision and dynamic modalities become way less obtrusive and way more mainstream. And until then, /end rant.